Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Volley Rally. Today, you have me, Jake, along with Liza from the Volley team. And it is unlikely that if you work with us, that you do not know who Liza is. But for those unlucky few, Liza, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Liza. I lead our customer success and implementation team for Volley, based out of Fort Myers, Florida, and been with Volley kind of as long as it had a customer success team. So excited to chat with you today.
For sure. And today, we're going to be talking about campaign prioritization. One of the things that your team helps with is helping customers set up their campaigns. So you certainly have a lot of insight there. And when you are talking with the customers and your team, how do you decide which calls that should be prioritized?
Yeah, I think there's a few factors that you have to consider when you're deciding which calls should be prioritized. What's the order of operations? One of those first factors that I think you have to think about is whether or not the calls are time sensitive. So everyone on the sales side knows that brand new leads are time sensitive. There's the stop the clock rule on new leads, but also, as time goes on, that lead is less likely to convert. But you also have time sensitive calls on the service side. There are service leads, right? Same rules apply. But also an easy one to talk about are appointment calls. So appointment confirmations, calls to follow up after an appointment has already occurred. Those are time sensitive calls. So a lot of our accounts will prioritize those. Those need to be done kind of first thing in the morning to make sure that we're catching the customer not after their appointment has already occurred, sort of thing.
Which calls are most likely to yield positive results?
Good question. So, we just said on the sales side, you're more likely to yield a positive result if that customer hasn't already set an appointment with someone else, or they're not in the market anymore. So on the sales side, I would say catching the leads early, you're more likely to yield positive results. You might also find that certain lead sources provide more positive results from your efforts than other lead sources. Some lead sources might not give you as good of information about the people who are submitting leads, so you're not as likely to yield a positive outcome. On the service side, you need to look at it, with potentially your account manager. You need to sit down and look at, if you're just doing a regular old maintenance retention campaign, maybe you've got it broken out into active, lazy, lost customer base. Off the cuff, typically your active customers are most likely to schedule. They already schedule with you. They're a regular customer. They're due right now. That call is likely to yield positive results. Your lazy customers, they're already lazy. They're already behind. So they're probably less likely to schedule just by definition of who they are. Your lost customers, even further down the tracks kind of thing. So you kind of have to balance, I think, the calls that are potentially revenue generating against what the goals are for your particular store. You may want to focus on a call that isn't necessarily, the highest revenue, but you have a different purpose for that phone call. Maybe it's CSI sort of thing. A CSI call, you don't really yield any revenue from it, but it helps your dealership on the CSI front. So different goals.
Are there any barriers that need to be considered when you're planning which calls to make?
Yes. I think, just that, the goals of the store. One that we bump into a lot, again, on the service side, is availability. That could be availability for appointments. That's what initially I jumped to. If the schedule is already booked out for the week. It's harder to schedule appointments when you can't get people in same day, next day. That can be a barrier. Availability of parts. If it's a recall, right? That's a barrier to scheduling. And I'm sure there are more barriers to converting, right? So definitely there are things, right? I always talk about things that you can control and things that are outside of your control. So hopefully if things are happening within your BDC, you're addressing those internally, but also kind of keep your eyes up of things that might be happening outside of the BDC.
So I'm a BDC agent or manager, and I've just started working with Volie. I've decided what I want to call on, how I want to run my BDC. How do I convey that to my rep, and what does Volie do there?
Good question. There are a lot of layers within Volie's like an onion, to quote Shrek, if you catch where I'm going. Yeah, there's a lot of layers to how you can prioritize and different settings that you can use within Volie. So I would start, I guess if you're having that conversation, start kind of high level. When my rep sits down at their desk, this is what I want them to see. These are the types of calls that need to be accomplished every single day. We cannot move on until these calls are completed. That helps us understand, okay, that should belong in this bucket. And then you can get more granular from there. So once I've made my daily phone calls, kind of those highest priority must complete before moving on, now maybe I'm in my regular, plug and chug kind of outbound campaigns. How do you want those to be touched? Important consideration, if you're dialing for a dealer group, you're not just representing one store. You need to make sure that every store gets touched, every store gets some love. And there are tools within Volie in particular that you can utilize that your rep can help you turn on, so that that's not a manual process. We hear from a lot of managers, their process pre-Volie was, I have Jake log into Hyundai, I have Liza log into Subaru, Sadie logs into Mazda. They split their reps, and that works in other systems. Great news is with Volie, you don't have to do that. You can set up your queues in your different stores to rotate automatically, so that you don't lose any of your coverage on inbound calls. Liza, Jake, and Sadie can all answer the phone if it rings, but you're still kind of you're making sure that all of the different queues for your different stores are being touched. So I would say in having that conversation, easy way to think about it is just talk through your rep's day. What does their day need to look like in order to accomplish your goals?
When you are working through a campaign, when should you turn off a campaign?
There's a few different reasons that people might choose to pause outbound dialing for a campaign. One we mentioned earlier was parts availability. That's pretty common. A lot of our accounts will split out their recall campaigns by recall code, so that they have that dexterity. If they need to stop calling for a particular recall because they don't have parts, they can do that. That's a good reason to pause. You can always turn them back on when those parts come in or they become available. Another reason, right, to potentially stop dialing a particular record in a campaign is because that record has gone stale, or it's the call that I was going to make is no longer appropriate. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the appointments. There needs to be a set expiration on some of those appointment confirmation phone calls. If Jake has an appointment at 4 p.m., if I don't call him by 4 p.m., I shouldn't make that call at all anymore. Now it's turned into an appointment follow-up. If I call Jake at 4:30 to confirm his appointment, I look silly. So things like that. You want to make sure that you are serving up kind of good opportunities for your team. And to me, that also means that those opportunities are fresh. they still meet the criteria that we're calling about. The customer, our audience fits whatever reason it is that we're reaching out to them. So it's important to make sure that you're keeping your cues up to date. And you might, if they're not up to date, you need to have some sort of rule in place that kind of filters that old stale stuff out.
And all of these tools that are available in Volie, pausing campaigns in particular, if you don't know that you're out of parts, do I need to get in contact with my Volie rep, or can I get this done myself?
You can get it done yourself. If you don't know how, then 100% reach out to your Volie rep. But there's a screen in Volie, it's campaign attempt management, that a lot of our best, I would say, BDC managers, that's a screen that they're looking at, and they might be manipulating every single day. So if you're not familiar with that screen, get with your Volie rep. There's different strategies to utilizing that screen to make sure that you are kind of having your best at bat kind of opportunities.
Can you talk a little bit about budget when it comes to planning campaigns?
Yeah, so you have the ability also in Volie to set a budget for a particular campaign or a reason for enrolling your customers, for contacting your customers. And by a budget, I'm meaning a set number of dials, a set number of appointments. You can also cap the number of customers that you're enrolling in a particular time period. So in a day, in a week, in a month, whatever it is. You might utilize that functionality again if you kind of want to rotate your queues, right? So I want to call 50 people per day on all of my maintenance retention campaigns. Once I've gotten through 50 customers on all of my maintenance retention, I want to open up my next level of calls. Maybe that's my recalls or my state inspections, my special order parts, however. So you can use those budgets to sort of set a recurring cap on activities for your team. And like I mentioned, they can be calls, they can be appointments set, called customers, etc.
What are some of the biggest mishaps you see teams make when it comes to prioritizing which campaigns to call on?
Good one. So prioritization is absolutely, you need to talk with your Volie rep about it. One of the biggest mishaps that I see is having almost too many groups. If I have 10 different priority settings, what's the likelihood that I'm getting down to number 10? So something that you should look at, and your rep can help you with this, look at your average daily volume for your team and put a little bit of math into it. Okay, if I know my team now can get through 500 dials per day, how deep into those priorities are they going to get on an average day? And am I okay with that? Am I okay with them not getting down to 10 every single day? Especially on a Monday. If we know on a Monday their inbound volume is super high, maybe they're not getting their 500 dials, maybe they only get 400. Am I okay with the fact that they won't touch group 10? So talk through those different scenarios. It's a little bit of staffing, a little bit of math, right? But we can help you figure that out. That's one of the biggest things I see, is not getting deep enough penetration. And sometimes it's just because you have too many layers, too many barriers to get all the way down to the bottom of the barrel there.
One of the things that I keep hearing you say is talk to your Volie rep. So folks, if you're listening to this and you want to better prioritize your campaigns, make sure you're hitting the right customers at the right time, talk with your Volie team. We are here. Liza's team is here to make sure that you guys can be as successful as possible. Liza, thanks for taking the time to introduce yourself and to share a little bit of your insights. I know that we will have you do a few more of these short little calls here to share some more insights, but appreciate it. Any last minute thoughts here?
Talk to your volley rep. No, we love these types of conversations. These are really fun. The strategizing is really fun for us. So let us in on those conversations. We love to do it.
Sounds great. Thank you very much for taking the time, and for everyone listening, thanks and have a great day.